And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Now, if she's the mother, then she must have children, right? And these children are nice children, or are they also harlots? They're also harlots. So there must be a lot of other churches that are also teaching apostasy. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints. So this system has persecuted God's people throughout the ages. And with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and when I saw, I wondered with great admiration. Now here's one of the woodcuts from Martin Luther's first Bible, and it's amazing. And he writes, "There stand all the Pope's bulls and books in which he roars like a lion, that no Christian can be saved without being obedient and subject to him in all he wishes, all that he says, all that he does. All of this powerfully demonstrates that he is the true Christ of the end times, or Antichrist, who has opposed and exalted himself over Christ." Quoting Thessalonians, "For he will not permit Christians to be saved apart from his power, even though his power is nothing, neither established nor commanded by God. Finally, it is nothing but the devil himself at work when the Pope pushes his lies about masses and purgatories and monastic life and human works and worship, which is in fact the essence of the papacy, over and against God, and condemns, kills, harasses all Christians who do not exalt and honor this abomination of his above all things." Martin Luther had a way with words, as you see. And the woodcut, you see the kings of the world bowing down to the woman riding the beast, and she has the papal tiara on her head, just to make sure that everybody knows what he was talking about. And Martin Luther was personally involved in the woodcuts. Now here's an interesting one. Here are two renditions of his Bible editions. These are the two witnesses speaking, and the dragon that is about to attack them. And you will see that the first one had this triple crown on it. Not very prominent, but it had it on. And then there was a complaint by the princes, and so the next edition had that triple crown removed and replaced with a normal kingly crown. And Martin Luther was upset. So we read, once Luther was convinced that the Roman papacy was the Antichrist, he wasted no time making it known in his writings, and using the artist at his disposal, Lucas Cranach, to reinforce it visually. He had Cranach portray the beast that comes up from the abyss with a triple papal tiara to accompany Revelation 11 in the first edition, September 1522, of his translation. Probably the complaint of the imperial council or regency, Reichsregiment, the papal tiara had to be replaced in the second edition by a simple crown in 1522. But that didn't please Martin Luther at all, and so he had the next one commissioned with the dragon even bigger and a massive triple crown on the head so that nobody would miss it. And it says, when Luther's translation of the entire Bible was being prepared for publication in 1534, and the as yet unidentified manuscript from Cranach's workshop was preparing woodcuts, based in a large part on Cranach's previous woodcuts, the triple tiara was restored. And it says here, Luther wasn't just responsible for the translation, but also for much of the artwork. So this was clearly identified by the Protestant Reformation, and we do not have to guess who the beast was. So we have to go to the false prophet. Who's he? Revelation 19 verse 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, who wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. So we know that it must be an earthly institution, because together with the beast, the papal power, it will be destroyed when Christ destroys it with fire from heaven. But the dragon is not there. Why? Because he's not destroyed during the millennium, right? He is alive. Now, who is this false prophet? So the second beast of Revelation 13 tells us what his characteristics are. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and it had 2 horns, like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And with this fire he will deceive them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, which he had power to do before the beast. So here is a lamb-like beast, a political system with 2 horns. And what are these 2 horns? Well, what were they in the case of Babylon? It was churchcraft and statecraft. So these 2.
Okay, so because Luther said it, that's supposed to make it true? Why don't you guys baptize infants or believe Christ is physically present in Eucharist? Or that the pastor does a sacerdotal work in bringing that presence about, or venerate saints? Or what about his abhorrent comments regarding the Jews and the disabled? Luther was a fallible man, Walter, and he had his own vices and demons oftentimes which clouded his own judgments. That's just the facts. But he says stuff like this because Luther said it. That's supposed to support everything he's saying? This is just gish galloping. What do Luther's woodcuts have to do with anything that you've been presenting so far? It doesn't have anything to do with the text. And I like Luther. I have his bobblehead back on the shelf right there. I've read his books. I have his books. I've read a lot of Luther. But so what? None of what he's saying now supports his attempt at interpreting the text. But more important, Walter, you know what else Luther was personally involved with in that same book? The actual translation of the text. How's about instead of looking at Luther's woodcuts, you actually look at his translation of the text? Say Matthew 28:1. Walter claims, as his prophetess did, that the 2 greatest dragon doctrines are supposedly Sunday sacredness and the immortality of the soul. They love citing Luther to say he rejected the latter, which was heavily influenced, by the way, by his disdain for purgatory. Later in his life, he reconsidered this due to the biblical text. But nevertheless, in his 1545 translation, folks, his 1545 translation of the Bible, he translates Matthew 28:1 as first day Sabbath. Look at his translation. Now in the evening of the Sabbath, which began in the morning of the first solemnity of the Sabbaths, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Notice how the ESV and most modern translations render it. They say, now after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week. But that phrase, the first day of the week, is the debated idiomatic phrase. That phrase, after the Sabbath and dawn of the first day of the week, is the same exact word in the Greek. So some translators have argued there's zero reason to translate them differently when it's the exact same word. But what does Luther say in his translation? The Sabbath began when? The morning of the first day. This is because a lot of modern translations have lost the idiomatic aspect of the Greek phrase that is used for both first day, which is actually first day Sabbath, which you can see in the ESV, like I said. Now, we have an article on this on our website that gets into this in detail, and we'll actually be dedicating a live stream to this in the coming weeks. So if you're an Adventist, just hold tight. I know your head is exploding right now. So I won't trail off into all that now. But yes, lots of translations recognize that the New Testament Greek over and over again uses the phrase first day Sabbath when referring to the first day after the resurrection. A friend actually shared an SDA response to this with me a few days ago, where the guy was claiming no serious translator translates it that way. Okay, so the Miles Coverdale translation, Luther's translation, Theodore Beza's translation, the Vulgate, the 1539 Great Bible, the Bishop's Bible, heck, Even the modern King James Bible. None of those individuals were serious translators, apparently. And there's more than that. That's only a sampling. But hey, Luther's Bible had some cool woodcuts, right? No serious translator. Okay, buddy. It's a lot more complex than that, my friend. And all of those, by the way, Adventists, all of those translators were utilizing the Textus Receptus manuscripts, which is what the King James was translated from, that Adventists love so much. So again, Adventists, before you balk and scoff and say, I'm talking out the side of my neck, you don't know what you're talking about, go read the article and come back for when we dedicate a live stream to this topic in a few weeks. But while Walter's busy oohing and ahhing about Luther's detestation for the papacy, Luther supposedly espoused dragon theology, sir. So why are you appealing to Luther, who, if someone today aligns with, like Lutherans, which I know a lot, they're more like Melanchthons, but either way, they'll be considered part of Babylon. Why? Because of present truth? Because he had a personal grudge against the papacy that his own personal experience played a major part in influencing? Luther didn't agree with this whole narrative you're weaving right now, sir. And just because he had a disdain for the papacy, that has nothing to do with your butchering of Scripture. This doesn't support that we're supposed to buy into all this, leave where we currently are and start lapping up this style of teaching. I can't imagine sitting under this type of teaching week in and week out. And I know, like I said, he isn't a pastor, but many SDA pastors are just like this guy, if not more ardent about it. Again, the Protestant reformers were unanimous in their understanding of the law-gospel distinction. Yet you guys reject that. You're out of step with it, and you're proselytizing a false gospel. So why, since you're appealing to supposed unanimity of the reformers, do you reject everything else they were unanimous on? Note too, the "we don't have to guess who the beast was" line. No, Walter, you guys, you don't know this with absolute certainty. You're kidding yourselves. You're talking about the false prophet. How's about we talk about the false narrative you're selling? The Revelation was a closed book before you guys came along, shedding precious rays of light from the throne room of God onto the biblical text? No. Christians down through the centuries have simply recognized that not all of Scripture is the same literary genre. Apocalyptic literature has to be handled and read in a certain way. It's advanced. You guys are kidding yourselves when you think you've cracked some sort of code implying everyone else before you was clueless and ignorant. But then in the 19th century, God used anti-Trinitarian, anti-gospel heretics and a woman with a third-grade education to come along and correct the church universal? No, you're playing yourself, sir. You're playing yourself. The apocalyptic books of Scripture have had much debate because they aren't as crystal clear as you guys act when you just assert things without the text explicitly saying it. Which means you have an interpretation. It isn't just believing the Bible like so many SDAs assert. It drives me crazy when they say this. We just believe the Bible. No, you believe your interpretation. You have an interpretation. You just think yours is infallible. And it's not. It's full of holes. You do this because Ellen White's lesser light is supposedly the infallible insight into the text, as we have shown and looked at numerous times. So therefore, you think you have it all figured out. When no, you're in the same boat everyone else is, and there are a heck of a lot better interpretations out there. Yes, the reformers can be wrong, sir, as you guys would assert on virtually every other doctrine they held to. Everyone.